to the July 16th Lawrence City Commission meeting tonight. I would like to point out that we are one commissioner shy. Leslie Soden is off on vacation this week, so she will not be with us tonight. So we'll start the agenda with the approval of the agenda, which the City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting. Do I have a motion? Does anybody want to change the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Ananda, second by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Item B, which is executive session. Consider approving a motion to recess an executive session. Recess into executive session for approximately 30 minutes to discuss pending litigation pursuant to KSA 754319B2. The justification of the executive session is to keep attorney-client privilege matters confidential at this time. At the end of the executive session, the City Commission will take a short break until the normal meeting time at 5:45.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Ananda, second by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. We're in executive session. To our city commission meeting for this evening. We are on to item C, which is our recognition and proclamations, which we have none today, so we'll move on to our consent agenda. Note all matters listed below on the consent agenda are considered under the one motion and will be acted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Members of the public wishing to speak to an item that has been pulled off the consent agenda will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Are there any items that the commission would like to pull? Okay, I would like to pull item D5A, which is the Stratford Tower, as well as the D.8A, which is the AHAB approved projects. Are there any items that the public would like to have pulled from the consent agenda?
Madam Chairman, my name is Tuck Duncan. I'm an attorney out of Topeka, Kansas. I'd like you to pull item D.6, and I think there's others here who would like you to pull that also so that the public may comment on it.
Okay,
That's the ordinance relating to the
yes.
new requirements for drinking establishments.
Okay, we'll pull that. Any other items that anybody would like to pull from the consent agenda? All right. Then we'll go ahead and get started on these items, or we'll have a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda accepting items D5A, D6, D8A.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Nanda, second by Commissioner Boley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously 4-0. Okay, let's start with item D.5A. Hi, Melissa. I pulled this because I just wanted to get a little bit more information about the engineering services cost. I was a little concerned about how high they were. Maybe you could help me out to understand that.
Yes, Mayor, Commissioners, Melinda Harger, Assistant Director, MSO. This particular engineering services agreement includes beyond just design. So it includes the bidding and the construction phase services as well. So referring to our design fee guidelines that were adopted in January of 2011, there's a fee guideline curve that was set for basic design services, and that ranges, but it basically, for larger projects, kind of plateaus around 7 and 8%. So looking at this project, one thing that we did not provide that I'd like to clarify is the breakdown of what's basic and non-basic on this. For reference, the second to the last page of the agreement, it did have a breakdown of all the different tasks. And looking at those tasks and the associated fees, you'll see a considerable amount is associated with phase 1, which is the preliminary design report, phase 3, which is construction phase services, and phase 4, which is resident engineering services. So that's some on-site engineering inspection during some of those key components of construction. So the basic architectural engineering services come to $183,698, which is 4.8% of the total project budget of $3.8 million. And then the non-basic was $404,924, so a little over 10%. So many times we don't put in the construction phase services or the bidding yet, not knowing how well defined the project is. This one we were pretty confident to do that, along with some of our waterline projects are similar. We know what will be required in terms of inspections on a tower, on a brand new tower.
All right. Okay, thank you. I was just, in the future, can we have those kind of divided out a little bit? It helps me to.
We
that
will
way I don't have to
definitely
ask
do that in
questions.
the future,
Thanks.
yes. That was an
Appreciate it.
oversight. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Any other questions on this one? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Any public comment on this item? Okay, bring it back up here. I'm okay with the explanation. To move forward.
I would move that we authorize the city manager to execute engineering services agreement for the Stratford Water Tower Replacement Project CIP UT1984 with Black Veatch Corporation in the amount of $588,622.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herbert, second by Commissioner Boley. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. So item D6 for the safe bar. Come on up.
Madam Mayor, my name is Tuck Duncan. I'm an attorney at Topeka, Kansas. The bulk of my practice is liquor license licensing. I'm here on behalf of the Kansas Licensed Beverage Association. And if you want to know more about me, you can find it at tuckduncanlaw.com, because since I only have 180 seconds, I won't go into my background, but I'll talk about, and I won't go into the matters which are set forth in my correspondence, which is attached to your agenda item, and I request it be incorporated by reference herein. It's my position that this ordinance is preempted by the Club and Drinking Establishment Act. There's provisions in that law that says any ordinance that's in conflict with the act is void. I also believe that the incidental bar exemption only for theaters and retirement communities is arbitrary. If the threshold is 25% liquor sales in terms of mandating certain types of training, then why is that not equally applied to all licensees? Further, and this is a practice pointer, the 90-day pre-license requirement will be extremely difficult for licensees to fulfill for a manager. I mean, I license literally hundreds of establishments. And sometimes these management folks are literally not identified or known until a week or two before the opening. Some of them come from out of state if they're national chains and the like. And so it's just a pre-qualification for a new licensee is just not going to be doable in many occasions. So if you do proceed, as ill-advised as it might be, to enact this ordinance, that requirement ought to be at least the 90 days after the hire of the employee in this situation. I also don't think you have the authority to impose these costs on the licensees, as the accumulated cost for training, which no one knows what that's going to be on an annual basis, will exceed the occupational taxes that are capped by KSA 41-2622. And finally, and very importantly, on behalf of these folks, I am concerned that the training might create a cause of action by a patron against the licensee for their failure to meet some reasonable care standard when one patron perceives they were harassed by another patron over whom the licensee has absolutely no authority by respondeat superior or any other type of legal theory. The content, there is no definition in the ordinance of sexual harassment. So you're imposing on them a subjective standard as opposed to an objective standard. I know when I run a stop sign. And so
Thank you,
how are
Mr.
they
Duncan.
supposed to implement?
Thank you, sir.
I've used my 3 minutes?
Yes, sir. Thank
I knew
you.
I only had 180 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please resist passing this ordinance.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from staff on this?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Assistant City Attorney Maria Garcia. I do want to thank Mr. Duncan for his comments and for submitting the written correspondence ahead of tonight's meeting. It really gave me an opportunity to once again give this ordinance a hard look. After I received the correspondence, I conducted some additional research in response to the claims that were made. That included a thorough review of Kansas Supreme Court case law, Kansas statutes, consultation with some legal experts in this field. And after my review of it and all of that legal research, I have to respectfully disagree with Mr. Duncan's claim. It is my opinion and the opinion of our office that if the City Commission desires to proceed with this ordinance tonight, you would have the legal authority to do so. And I am prepared to respond to any specific questions you might have, though a legal discussion back and forth might be more appropriate for a different venue, should those claims be pursued. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Maria.
Sure.
Any questions for Maria? Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll open it up to public comment at this time.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Rob Farha. I'm one of those small business owners. I've had the wheel for 22 years now, and I'm not going to talk. I echo anything Mr. Duncan said. My talks here are just about the process, how we got here. Is my frustration level as I've worked tirelessly on some Moriah neighborhood stuff with Mr. McCullough for a 2-year text amendment, and we were always notified. So my frustration is the timeline, the process. We've learned that the commissioner started talking about this in February of 18. We've had no written notification. We caught wind of it that it was going to be on the October City Commission. We started making calls, got it pulled off. We got our first letter as a stakeholder on September 21st, offering 2 study sessions. There was a 9 a.m. and a 3 p.m. A few of us went to that, brought some ideas forthcoming. Obviously, it's a sensitive subject. It went back. It went to a city commission. A second letter came out. We found out the first letter only went to 150 licensees. After we questioned why doesn't it go to all, Applebee's, Chili's, everyone has the same DE license, whether it's my type of venue or a venue that serves 90% food. I'm sorry, that's the way the state has a license. So 235 letters went out on the December 21st with 2 more study sessions in January. Then there was a February 19th City Commission that I attended, more discussions, a presentation was given, video from Safe Bar. And after that, I specifically asked commissioners to be notified as a stakeholder on any commission, any topic about this. We as stakeholders have a right to be part of these discussions. It's affecting us. Not one letter or email since that, after I asked that on the February City Commission. Afterwards, there was a break, and I believe I verbally came up and asked, please recognize this. Our biggest concern is mandatory, as Tuck pointed out, that's written in there. We all met, about 12 to 14 owners, and once we've learned more, we had Safe Bar come, we've learned more, others have voluntarily stepped up. A lot of us didn't even know about it. They said emails went out. I had no one in person come. Email's not my source of thing. I'm not a tech guy. But, and we're willing to do, it's a subject, like I said, that's sensitive, voluntary, but the word mandatory has some very, I don't know what word I want to use, but as Tuck said, can create some consequences. So here we are today. There was another city commission that got postponed, and then boom, we hear it's on the consent agenda is why we've asked to pull it off to have further discussions. So again, my concern is the process that
Thank
took
you.
place.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Other public comment?
Hi, I'm Peach Motto. I'm one of the co-owners of the Sandbar and the founder. We are celebrating 30 years in this beautiful town this year, and I think our image is going to be 30 years of ducking around, and we're going to focus on all those ducks we have been spreading out for all these years. I do want you to know for the past 20 years, we have been using procedures in our bar from TIPS and TAM programs. And these are procedures that we use because behavior under the influence of alcohol is unique. And we have been using our policies for the bar for 20 years that have been very successful. We communicate really well. We have to keep our staff away from intervening. Even if you would read with the Surgeon General Jerome that when it comes to the impairment of alcohol, and if there's any intervention or anything that could kind of trip somebody off, he says it's best left to professionals, and that's what we've done. These programs are focused on prevention, awareness of what's going on in the room, communicating with other staff, coordinating the buddy program with our staff, with our customers. If we see that someone has gotten past our view or becomes, or starts to act and appear intoxicated and maybe not as safe, and preventing the troublemaker from entering our establishment through stringent ID policies and behavior expectations. It's really interesting how much trouble we can stop just at the door by talking to them, asking for additional ID. As far as predators, we generally don't see them in our kind of environments because they like to be not in a loud place where they can get attention. So our customer service skills of eye contact, getting to know people, is all important in prevention. And that's what we focus on. So we're really concerned about intervention, because in the word intervention, it does leave us up for liability and errors that can also cause both that individual and the business hardship. I mean, we have discrimination issues that could come up that we can't get liability insurance for, even if it is a staff. We had a really hard time with some ADA stuff this last few years when a company or an individual decided to sue 12 of us bars in the same area, and we were all old bars. We do not allow our staff to intervene with potential problems. We do notify the police department. Lawrence Police Department will tell you we call for walkthroughs, and that's what we call it. Whenever we see something that looks like it could be something, we just say, hey, would you guys come through a walkthrough? This has been a successful practice and policy.
Thank you.
I just want you to
Appreciate
know that what we do is important for the room we're in,
Yes.
and it's worked.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other public comment on this item?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Chuck Magrill. I'm the proprietor of Wheatfields Bakery and Free State Brewing Company here in Lawrence. We've been in business for 30 years or so, and feel like we've got a pretty good reputation for having taken care of a lot of the details that are required for us day to day. We look at troubles and issues as all of us would on priority basis. What are the real issues that are confronting us on an immediate situation? And I think you have that information. Obviously, sexual violence is a very serious concern, and it's something that any of us as parents concern ourselves with on a daily basis. The stats that you have that you've received from both the Lawrence Police Department and the KBI indicate that for Lawrence, out of the 450, I believe, reports in that 3-year time frame, 7 of them are in relation to drinking establishments. So we're way down the list. If you look at the list in terms of locations of problems as drinking establishments, we're way down the list, somewhere in that 1.5% category, I believe, as far as the location. That doesn't mean that we should not be engaged in the process of trying to remedy the situation on a community-wide basis, but it's obviously not our business as a source, but we could be a resource in remedying. And that's where an approach that would employ us as allies rather than impose a further restriction on our ability to do business is probably the wisest approach to take. And I don't believe this process addresses it from that angle. So I hope there's a better opportunity for these real serious concerns to be addressed in a manner that is not as imposing as this one is. And I think there's also room within the city. I could be wrong. You know the stats better than I, but I think the city gathers about 1 or 2.4 million a year, perhaps, from our drinking establishments in the city. And I think within that 2.4 million, there's probably a little bit of room to create a program that would show us as a caring community overall. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you, Chuck. Other public comment on this item?
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Rick Renfro. I was coming here as a bar owner, but now I think I've changed my thing around. I think I'm more of a community person. I sent everybody a letter about what I thought were the concerns, and I don't want to go through all that, but that's from the bar owner's angle. But I think as a community member, I think like Chuck, and I'm Chuck's so eloquent, and Tuck and Marie are the lawyers that are arguing about how we're going to do this. And Peaches ought to get together with Kelsey and Chrissy and develop a program, because they all know what they're talking about. So I'm all for Safe Bar. I've had my staff go through it. I want to help these guys create more volunteerism to get people to do it. I think it goes down to, like a lot of other things, it's the carrot and the stick, right? So we ought to get together as a community, fix the process like Rob said, get more involved. I mean, in the letter that I sent you, to me, it's all about communication and education. If these guys would have been persistent, if they had the money to go out and be persistent and get more people involved, we could spread this across the whole community. And this could be the TAM thing that we give out for bar people, because it's sexual violence is one of the issues. But the main issue is bystanders that should intervene when they can, whether we got a housing issue or we've got mental health issues or jail. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So I think that we need to rethink this, get together in some work groups and try and figure out a better way to go forward. I think that's it. Are there any questions? Okay,
Not right
thank you
now,
very
we'll
much.
let you know, okay?
Yep.
Thanks, Rick. Other public comment?
Hi, I'm Travis Sartain. I'm with the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. We sent a letter to the council on May 21st, citing a few situations and concerns that we have for the mandation of the training. And one of the biggest things that we're worried about is the liability, where it rests on our restaurants and as a hospitality industry. And the biggest concern is that liability. What happens when someone comes in, I intervene, and someone gets hurt? Where does that go? So we're really concerned about that, and we really want you to consider we not mandating this, and a volunteer, like all the other people have said, like Rick said, we're all for training and helping people and make sure it's safe. But we definitely want to look at a different way than what's being proposed. Any questions?
Thank you. We'll let you know. Thanks. Any other public comment on this item? Okay, we'll bring it back up here.
Well, as the person who originally proposed this program, I still support the program. I think that some of the stats that we talk about are correct. Obviously, the sexual assaults that are reported are very low, and there's a reason for that. That I can speak even anecdotally to my own experience as a Title IX coordinator, deputy Title IX coordinator at KU, that more than half of my cases at some point in that evening involved a bar. And that's probably a low estimate. I think that when we talk about active bystander training, we are not talking about someone putting themselves in an unsafe situation, and I think that the training that they go through will very clearly articulate that. But this is a prevention training. It's offered for free. I would love to see this program made obsolete because every bar in Lawrence has come together to say, we are doing Safe Bar. That would be amazing. I think it's really easy to have that intention, and this is a way to perhaps inspire that intention to continue because it's very important to our community. You know, one of the speakers said that they might have concerns that they have children who experience this. I am concerned because I can experience this, and so can every other person in this room. It's very personal for every individual, regardless of their sex or gender, although there are folks who are more at risk than others. I think that it is probably frustrating to have a statute put in place without the consent. I think that the consent that we're talking about has far greater of an impact on people's day-to-day lives than implementing a training that can help so many people in so many ways responsibly.
Anything else?
This is a tough one. I appreciate the efforts that the restaurants and the bar owners are making. I agree with Jennifer, it's important for our community, and I'm going to go ahead and support it.
Matthew?
I think a lot of the concern about the liability aspect actually comes into play in the actual situation itself as opposed to in the training, which is what we're authorizing tonight. My concern would be similar to Mr. Farhaw's in the 90-day prior policy, or that might have actually been Mr. Duncan, I think, who talked about the difficulty of getting an established management team 90 days prior. You know, I think his experience, obviously, with securing liquor license for all those people is probably relatively accurate. That a lot of those, a lot of businesses within that industry, you don't necessarily have a management team set up until just before opening. So my concerns would be more along those lines of the 90-day policy, not so much about whether or not we should do this.
So is there a grace period, any sort of grace period in there, Maria, on that?
Mayor, the ordinance as drafted right now says that the training has to be completed within 90 days preceding the application. So if a manager is hired 10 days, I think was the example, before this license is applied for, then of course that's a short turnaround to attend the training. There isn't a grace period, but you have within 90 days. And then if a manager is hired after the license is issued, then now the clock starts over and they have 90 days to complete that training.
Okay. So it's after the license is issued.
The clock starts over, but then before the license is issued, it's within 90 days.
So what happens if they can't get that training within, if they get hired 10 days, like you said?
Well, they would have, if they get hired within 10 days, then they would have that amount of time to get the training if they want to apply for licensure in 10 days. Otherwise, they could extend it out and wait to apply.
They could wait till after they get their license? Is that, I guess I'm not following.
No, so let's say an on-site manager is hired 10 days before the licensee applies for licensure, then they would need to get that training within the 10 days. The Care Center in its proposal did say that it could provide training twice a month. So if it is in fact 10 days or, with, 2 weeks, then perhaps they could attend one of those trainings.
Okay.
And they apply for licensure. It's not like a 12/31 to 12/31 license, right? Like December 31st or January 1st through December 31st.
Right.
It's any time, right?
For the liquor licensure, it just depends on when they obtained it. So it could be, and correct me if I'm wrong, City Clerk, it could be July 1st is when they obtained it, so then they have 2 years after that for July 1st to renew.
And it sounds like
Rob, hang on, okay?
CMB,
Hang on.
CMB license holders, though, that is December 31st to December 31st, but there are far fewer CMB licensees in Lawrence than there are liquor.
and it sounds like the concern was with a new license rather than a renewal.
Is that,
Yeah, that's,
That's
as
what
I
I heard.
understand it,
It's just with
the
the brand new
situation
license.
is purely with a new
right,
industry.
okay. So not the renewal so much. Is that right?
For new establishments, they are not just gonna pop up in a building. They do have to have appropriate zoning and they have to have land use approval. So if they are, seeking their license 10 days before they open, and that's, the first time that they've been checking in with the city about what rules apply, that doesn't seem like appropriate planning on their part.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Any other questions? Okay. Hang on, Chuck, hang on. We're still deliberating up here, okay? Okay.
Technical aspect, at this point, I know I'm not required to provide the city with any list of employees for my businesses.
Chuck, let us finish up here and we'll get back with, okay? Thank you. So anything else you want to add to that? I guess, I do support this, and what I really appreciate is that several people came up and talked about wanting this to be sort of a community-wide, and use our various organizations here in town as resources, as an ally, even as Chuck said. And I don't know why that can't continue after this is in place. Why can't that process continue as a community situation, as a community education program? I think that would be a really good way to expand the program. You know, we've been talking about this process for quite some time, and I'm supportive of it to go forward. But I would also like to see the conversation continue and have some more community education on what this is all about, as well as trying just to spread the word. So that's where I'm at with it.
I would move that we adopt on first reading ordinance 9566 requiring certain staff working at licensed liquor and cereal malt beverage premises to participate in sexual violence training.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Nanda, a second by Commissioner Boley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item is D8A. This is on the approved projects for the Affordable Housing Advisory Board.
And Mayor, you had a specific question around this?
I did. I just, I looked through the projects that were approved, and, I mean, I think they look, you know, look really good. One concern I had was it seems like we continue to see these come forth with them focused on the east side of town, and that one of the things that we've discussed as a commission up here is our idea that we would like to see more scattered housing, this fund to be used as more scattered throughout the community. So I just wanted to get an update as to what we're doing to try to you know, meet that goal.
Great, thank you. It's an astute observation. I'm Scott McCullough with the Planning and Development Services Department. And Mayor, if you'll please indulge me this opportunity
Sure.
to introduce you to the newest member of your affordable housing staff team. Alyssa Ice is the city's first housing administrator. This is a position created last year for implementation at the midterm of this year. And Alyssa comes to us from the Missouri Housing Development Corporation, where she worked with the State of Missouri Housing Trust Fund as a trust fund coordinator, underwriter, and accountant. Alyssa holds a master's degree in public administration from UMKC and really demonstrated a passion for putting people in income appropriate housing. And so we have welcomed her here just really very
Yes.
recently.
Welcome. Thank you.
On to your specific question, Mayor, I'd point out just a few things. Your question is what are staff and the various boards doing to address scattering housing? The first item I might point out is an interactive map that we've created and have had posted for a little while of where housing trust fund awards have gone to in the city. And the reason there are so many of them is because these represent some vouchers in the New Horizons program. And so we are attempting to track where those vouchers end up in terms of the city. I would also note that the toolkit that you may be familiar with, that AHAB has begun to use and implement, includes a goal to create dispersed affordable housing, especially as annexation opportunities present themselves. There's a policy in Plan 2040 that mirrors that goal and attempts to address that goal for annexations. So that's one thing we're talking about. But probably the deepest discussion we're having right now, and it is a very active discussion on this very issue, relates to the text amendment to place 2 homes on one platted lot. That's something that hasn't hit this commission yet. It has hit AHAB and Planning Commission once. It will hit them a second time here in the next couple of months. And there's a component of that discussion that aligns with that question that you have. But a little bit on the notice of funding availability award and why this round saw so many sort of in a concentrated east side, if you will. And that's because the awarding is very reactive in nature. The opportunity, I think, to get maybe at your aspiration to scatter them more comes perhaps in future rounds of setting up that notice of funding availability, where AHAB recommending to you can recommend a framework around making a scattered site a priority. I think, and Ron Gacius, the board chair, is here today. I won't speak for him except to hint at my belief that the board believes it can't be very choosy at this point in our sort of infancy with our trust fund, and so has not recommended that framework to you yet. But those are my response comments, and with that, if you'd like to hear from Mr. Gacious, he's here as well.
I would, if that would be okay. Ron?
Thank you, Mayor Larson, and members of the commission. Scott commented briefly on a conversation that we've entered into just the last 2 or 3 AHAB meetings. If you recall, we had 2 meetings back-to-back weeks in July where we reviewed projects and then made decisions on funding recommendations. But even before that, in the June meeting, we're starting to have some very good discussion about how do we continually fine-tune the notice of funding availability process to guide or surface from the community the types of projects that are our highest priorities. And I have to say here at the very beginning, as we've started this notice of funding availability process, and be mindful, the current board has only gone through this process twice. It's our intention to improve continuously that process and to become more directive with the process. My observation would be that the projects right now are popping up on the east side of town because that's where the least expensive lots are. So it's kind of the low-hanging fruit type of proposals that are available to us, the ones that just happen to be ready now, happen to be on the east side of town. West side of town does not have as many less expensive lots, making it right now a really good target for those kinds of developments. We could, in the future, consider having a set-aside, a forced distribution of resources. Honestly, I don't know how the advisory board would consider that. I think we wouldn't want to pass on a really good project in some neighborhoods simply because there have been other projects in that neighborhood. But at the same time, we intended to develop a toolbox that could be used throughout the community. And as Scott mentioned, Plan 2040 has some intentionality to it regarding affordable housing and annexed space. And we'd like to think that will have some opportunities for us to negotiate some densely populated affordable housing areas along our perimeter when future annexation's available.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. Any questions? Okay.
And I could respond to any questions you might have regarding the distribution of the $250,000 that we're recommending be available for grants also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll open it up to public comment at this time. Any public comment?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is KT Walsh. I'm representing the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association. And welcome, Alyssa. I'm so pleased to have someone on staff with that experience. So we just had a discussion about this at the East Lawrence meeting and also at the East Lawrence officers meeting last night. And the Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods has been discussing this in depth. So because everyone's very happy that we have an affordable housing trust fund now. Our concerns, our biggest concern is that it's hitting, like people who just graduated college, it's hitting this level of poverty that's the top level, and we're not hitting the next level down and the people living in their cars sometimes and families. There's actually more for people who live on the river than these 2 tiers in the middle. And we've been talking to the Housing Authority. It's great to hit those people, young people just getting out of college, need a career. But boy, is the need more intense at these 2 levels. And talk to the Housing Authority about that. Talk to Danny. My personal point is, does everybody know about the tax benefits if you donate land to the Community Land Trust? You could have great tax benefits if you live on the west side or anywhere. Donate the land to the community land trust, then it can be built on affordable housing by tenants to homeowners or the housing authority. We need to get that word out to people, tax benefits. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder on that. Any other public comment?
Is this just about this?
This, just about this subject here, yes. Any other public comment? Okay, back up here. I'm okay, I'm fine with the way the distribution was, reading through all the, that was my biggest point, is I just wanted to make sure that, I assumed you guys were at the Affordable Housing Board, but I just wanted to make sure we said something in public about that. So I appreciate your work on that, Ron.
I move we approve the Affordable Housing Trust Fund investments totaling $250,000 as recommended by the Affordable Housing Advisory Board and direct staff to prepare funding agreements with the agencies.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boley, second by Commissioner Ananda, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we're on to item F, which is our general public comment time frame. The public is allowed to speak to any items or issues except those scheduled on the consent agenda or regular agenda portions of the agenda, after first being recognized by the mayor. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes for public comment. As a general practice, the commission will not discuss or debate these items, nor will the commission make decisions on items presented during this time. Rather, they will refer the items to staff for follow-up, if necessary. Individuals are asked to come to the microphone, sign in, and state their name and address. Speakers should address all comments and questions directly to the commission. Hi.
Hi there. Commissioners, John Taha, 1620 East 686 Road. I'm here to speak a little bit about the community homeless shelter.
Is this about our budget?
It is.
Okay, we're going to have that item a little bit later in the regular agenda, so you would need to wait till then to discuss this, since it's not since it's already on our agenda. Okay, John, thank you. Sorry about that. These are general public comments that aren't related to anything on our agenda.
Hello, Commissioners. Again, my name is Garrett Tufte, and this is probably going to be the last time I'll mention this to you. As it is, I've said before and had a few comments over the last couple months concerning the environment, federal government, the greater sort of societal generalized things that are happening today. And I'd mentioned that I had a proposition or a set of propositions that at the highest level might assist a fair amount of general self-inflicted societal ills that we presently have in the country. I'd also like to clarify that this is not necessarily, these propositions are economic in nature. And at that, I have asked repeatedly to give a full presentation on this to the city. That has not happened. As a result, I will need to speak to this elsewhere, and in which case I just wanted to invite you this Sunday to our poetry open mic show, the forum, for pretty much anyone to come and speak on whatever they'd like. Mostly it's poetry and some music, that sort of thing. And I'll be using the 15 minutes that I have there to explain this proposition, at least in brief. 3 minutes is insufficient to even really bring it up, but I would like to mention, give a couple bullet points. Perhaps that would be a little more enticing for this, as the first proposition headline is homes, the second is accounts, and the third is reconciliation. And I would like to invite the city to send a representative and to hear thoughts on this matter when I release them then. And at a later date, I will more fully explain in writing in some sort of pamphlets, books, that sort of thing, after I actually, say something and speak on what it is that's on my mind at present. So I just want to let you know and appreciate it. And also, thanks for, in a lot of ways, providing this last 10 years I've been living here has been the incubator that has allowed me to come up with this idea and to explore many other artistic and creative pursuits. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Other general public comment to items not on the agenda? Okay. We will move on to the regular agenda items. We'll start with item number 1, which is to consider conduct a public hearing for a vacation request submitted by BG Consultants for Garber Automotive to vacate a 10-foot utility easement along the south line of Lot 1.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Dave Cronin with MSO. The property owner at 2216 West 6th Street, which is where Garber Automotive business is located, is requesting to vacate the 10-foot utility easement, which is here shown on the attached plat that's highlighted, along the south line of Lot 1, Willie's Auto Addition. The owner is seeking the vacation to landscape the area. All utilities and property owners within 200 feet were notified and no objections have been received. And staff recommends approving the order of vacation. I've got here's a aerial image of the location. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Which is there circled there on the south side of the lot. So it's with that, I'd stand for any questions and
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Dave.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boley, second by Commissioner Nanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. The public hearing is now open. Any public comment on this?
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm David Hamby with BG Consultants, representing the applicant. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hamby? Nope. Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay.
Move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Ananda. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously 4-0. So any idea of
I
comment?
move that we approve the order of vacation to vacate the 10-foot utility easement located adjacent to the south line of Lot 1, Willie's Auto Addition North, also known as the south 10 feet of Lot 1, Willie's Auto Addition North, a replat of a portion of lots 3 and 4 Rockledge North in the city of Lawrence, Douglas County, Kansas.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boley, second by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously, 4-0. All right. On to item number 2, which is to consider authorizing publication of the 2019 amended budget summary and establish August 6th of 2019 as the public hearing date.
Good evening, Jeremy Willen, Finance Director. Pull this item up here. The item before you tonight is to consider publishing or establishing the maximum levy for the 2019 budget and publishing the public hearing as of August 6th. On the chart, you can see those funds which are affected that we discussed at your last meeting. The library fund, bond and interest fund, the special gas tax fund, water wastewater fund, solid waste, stormwater, and the Parks Memorial Fund, along with the Housing Trust Fund. I don't believe I have any comments to add to what we had discussed in the previous meeting, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Jeremy? Okay, thank you.
Do you want to go through both items first, or do you want to go ahead and?
You're talking about just the 2019, right?
Right, this would
Right.
be requesting authorization to publish the 2019 amended budget summary and establish August 6th as a public hearing.
Yeah, we would just need to do that one first and then go on from there, okay? Right. So, no questions? Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. We'll open it up for public comment.
Okay.
Any public comment on this item? Okay, back up here.
Move that we authorize publication of the 2019 amended budget summary and establish August 6, 2019 as the public hearing date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Nanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously, 4-0. Now we're on to item number 3, which is consider authorizing publication of the 2020 budget summary, establishing maximum expenditure authority, and establish August 6th, 2019 as a public hearing date.
Yes, I wanted to just briefly go over the 2020 budget. Nothing has changed since the last meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page. Excuse me. On May 14th, we presented the capital improvement plan. On June 18th, we presented the city manager's recommended budget. On July 9th, we presented the work group's recommended changes. And tonight, we're establishing the maximum expenditure level by fund and authorizing publication of the public hearing. The authorization that we're requesting for you to do tonight includes a $500,000 increase to the general fund. We do note that the work group had identified reductions that could be applied to the 2020 budget that would reduce that. And staff just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page, that those items that were identified in the budget were one-time in nature. And so we could potentially be looking at, the need to address the mill again in 2021 based on the work group's recommendations. The other thing I wanted to note was, even though it is being published with the $500,000 increase, you are free to lower that at any time. Should the city commission choose to raise it, we would have to go through the publication process again, which is, I believe, why you directed staff to prepare the documents tonight with the $500,000 increase. Just to reiterate those key changes, that the city commission had directed staff to reduce the salaries to the city commission by $30,000, and that money was then moved, if you will, to the Lawrence Arts Center for grants to be funded out of the general fund. And I just wanted, before we get to the next step, that there are a few funds that are structurally imbalanced. A structural imbalance of a fund is when operating revenues and operating expenses are not equal, or operating revenues are lower than operating expenses, which is the case in these several funds here. When looking at the general fund, the total revenues available for the 2020 budget is $81,324,000, and the operating expenses that are ongoing in nature would be everything except for the one-time transfer to the internal service fund. So the operating expenses are $81,482, which is a structural imbalance of $158,000. In the recreation fund, if you remove the one-time revenue, which is the transfer from the general fund, the revenues would be $5.775 million. The one-time expenditures are essentially capital, and so the expenses are $6.13 million, so that it's operating expenses are in excess of revenue by $355,000. In the special recreation fund, the revenues are $828,000. The expenses, none of them are one-time, in my opinion, are $883,000. So the special recreation fund is out of balance by about $55,000. And the special gas tax fund, I would note that one of your recommendations was to remove that transfer. So if that transfer is removed, then the total revenues to the special gas tax fund would be $2.899 million. Expenses are $3.175 million. So the special gas tax fund is out of balance by about $276,000. And the guest tax fund, the revenues are $1.814 million, expenses are 3.175 million, or expenditures, I think I might have a typo here. That's not making sense to me. I apologize for that. But the point we were trying to get at with the guest tax fund was that operating expenses are 153,000 over operating revenues. And excuse me, just to be clear, there is sufficient fund balance to cover all those funds. But again, as finance director, I just think it's beholden to me to make sure that you all are aware as you deliberate the budget that these funds, since these are one-time expenses, or these are ongoing expenses in excess of ongoing revenues, are matters that will have to be addressed in future years. So the action tonight is to authorize publication of the 2020 budget summary and to establish the public hearing date of August 6th. And again, just the next steps at your next meeting, assuming that you consent, the public hearing will be held. We'll also be sharing the amended budget ordinance for first reading, as well as utility rate presentations for the water, stormwater rates, solid waste rates, and the parking rates that were all discussed at your last meeting, as well as the city commission salary ordinance and the 2020 working budget ordinance. And then after that, August 13th was when we're slated to have second reading on all of those, and if that is all approved at that time, the budget will be adopted. The budget has to be adopted by August 25th, so there is a little time between August 13th and the 25th should you need more time for deliberation. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Any questions for Jeremy? Nope. Thank you. Okay, we will open it to public comment at this time about our 2020 budget.
Is this appropriate time to
Yeah,
talk about the
if
homeless
it's-
shelter?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Walt Onesorge. I don't know where to sign in. It's okay. I live at 2136 Ohio Street. I'm here on behalf of Lawrence Community Shelter. I have only been there a month, but I have about 10 years of experience in social services here in town. And I'm under the impression that my job and the jobs of many others are sort of on the line with this upcoming budget. And really not just that, but the guest placement of up to half of our residents. And we have about 120 capacity, and we've been at capacity for the past month. So we're looking at an incredibly significant decrease in capacity should this money not be available. Just wanted to bring up some issues that are sort of common to homelessness, mental illness, addiction. But one of the things that maybe doesn't come up so much is disability. A lot of homelessness comes from disability. So the kind of people who would be put on the streets are people who already don't have anything. And I know this is really difficult to conceptualize for anybody who goes home to sleep in their own bed, myself included. I'm also under the impression that this is, in some sense, one big pot. Like, everybody likes to think that money is compartmentalized, but it also kind of isn't. So if there are people who want to put money somewhere else, I think we should be skeptical about where it's going and for what reasons. For instance, there are metrics for how much it benefits a city to have the homeless population reintegrated into the working population in terms of how much tax revenue they support the city with just by working, rather than having them in and out of the jail, for instance. So we've got
the jail, when next door, it's kind of it's an eyesore because it looks really nice. And it's also like a total money suck compared to what we do at the shelter. Now, my heart goes out to everybody on the force. I know that's a really hard job too, so I'm not trying to diminish that. I just want to be clear that in terms of boosting our economy, one does and one might not. So again, I'd like to encourage everybody to look for metrics in terms of what is going to bring in money and what is going to keep people safe. That's really what we should be concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment on the budget? Thank you, John.
The right time?
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right. I'll try to make this quick. Sometime in the last 10 years, the Lawrence Homeless Shelter was located on 10th in Kentucky. I think most of you remember where it was. The location was being run by a saint, Loring Henderson, but the lack of room made it very difficult to do casework and programming in the manner that would be most helpful to the clients. It was also very difficult to not have the overflow of clients creeping into the surrounding areas, and there were constant requests by neighbors to have the shelter move. So at that time, the City Commission asked the Shelter Board to work at finding another location. And after 100 attempts and 50 denials, the present location was finally approved. At that time, the Shelter Board conducted an amazing fundraising campaign to buy the new structure and to make the move. We raised over $4 million. And that was all private, except for some foundation money. And I think it should be noted that the commission at that time did not contribute 1 penny to that particular move. They did, however, give us a loan. I think it's somewhere in around $400,000. I'm not on the board anymore, and we still are paying you for that. I don't know what the rate of interest is. And a lot of that was because we had a bad inspection on the roof. So about $250,000 went to a roof repair, and we had about $100,000 in pledges that weren't paid. Since the move, there are now programs that are going on daily to better help the people get out of homelessness. There's also fewer homeless on the streets. The homeless board at that time, the whole key was trying to get these people out of homelessness. It shouldn't be any surprise to any of you that the cost of running the current program is costing more in that facility than the old program did. It should also be no surprise that to retain a director since the move, which they've had trouble doing, is also difficult when you figure the director out there is getting less than half of what most people in similar positions are going to get. And I mentioned, for example, Cottonwood would be a similar thing. It's very difficult to come up with a director with the money that we have in the budget. The only thing I'm going to mention again is that it's kind of hard. I get emotional with this, and I apologize for that. The shelter spending, I figure, somewhere in the matter of $8,000 or $9,000 a year, and that's not because each client stays there for a year, but that's about what the cost relates to when you figure 120 beds and the budget that they have. We spend $60,000 a year approximately to jail a person. Our homeless graduates contribute back to the community, they pay taxes, and they spend dollars on housing and other goods. I could talk to you for another hour about all the success stories that have come from the homeless shelter, but suffice it to say that the monies that you have contributed and are considering contributing
Thank you, John.
have resulted in many warm successes.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to ask one question or two before I quit. Would that be all right?
Yeah, well, 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank you.
No questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need some help here. Madam Mayor, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Steve Kelly. I live at 4529 Broadmoor Drive, and I'm an employee at the Lawrence Chamber EDC. We recognize the difficult decisions that you have to make in terms of the budget, but respectfully feel that the decision to reduce Chamber EDC funding comes at a time when support is probably more needed and important than it has ever been. The world is changing and the economy is changing as well. Many traditional industries struggle while more and more technology and knowledge-based businesses are becoming the leaders, in many cases must become the leaders for a successful economy. The sort of economic evolution we're seeing cannot be negotiated alone. It should and must be done collaboratively, and it must be done with the big picture in mind. Collaboration and big picture are synonymous with what we do as a Chamber EDC. We encourage, support, and oftentimes lead collaborative efforts involving the city, county, university, BTBC, Peasley Tech, KUSBDC, and a host of others, and are well suited to do so because we are not focused just on our specific piece of the economic matrix, but work from the broader perspective in support of the greater good. Historically, the Chamber has been at the point of many of the initiatives that have played such a critical role in the positive development of the community. That's not to downplay the successes that we've directly had a role in, including a number of recent expansions, of which Plasticon and Grandstand would be prime examples, or our support of small entrepreneurial business, which has impacted the success of 6 small local companies over the last 18 months through the Network Kansas Metropolitan E-Community Loan Program, which we operate. What I think is more important is shared success, that our efforts and the support provided by the Chamber to KUSBDC, BTBC, Peasley Tech, and others has paid dividends for the community far beyond the city's budgetary line item. What we believe, and I think most of you would agree with, is that what we need to see happen is an increase in our efforts to grow the tax base and increase collaboration that enables us to leverage our strategic advantages, whether that be the university, our vibrant downtown, or our potential for entrepreneurial development. The Chamber is best positioned to bring the various entities, both public and private, together to advance our common interests. To experience a budget reduction in the midst of so many strategic initiatives that capitalize on community opportunities is very discouraging. We respectfully request that you give sincere consideration to reinstating the Chamber budget request as it was recommended through PERC and the city budget process. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Steve. Other public comment?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Michael Roscoe, and I live at 1807 Foxfire Drive here in Lawrence. And tonight I'm speaking to you in 2 capacities. Number 1, my official capacity as the chair-elect for the Lawrence Chamber. And then I want to share some anecdotes in my day job, which is as regional president for U.S. Bank. And in that role as regional president for U.S. Bank, the region that I manage from a geographic perspective starts over on the other side of Missouri, just outside of St. Louis, and it works its way west here to Topeka. And basically I've got all of the U.S. Bank lines of business that are north of US 50 in Missouri. And because of the role that I'm in, I'm very familiar with what communities that are similar in size to ours are doing from an economic development perspective. You know, communities like Columbia, Missouri, St. Joseph, Missouri, Hannibal, Sedalia, Topeka. And, you know, I can tell you from being familiar with what those communities are doing that they're all very heavily invested. And one of the things I wanted to share tonight that we're seeing both as a company, and I think we're starting to see as a city, is that the world is changing, and it's changing because of many different factors. Things like demographics, technology, globalization, and that's having significant impacts on the communities that U.S. Bank does business in. And so I think now as our economy here locally in Lawrence continues to be impacted by all these external factors, and we start to transition to a more knowledge-based economy, I think it's more important now than ever that we continue to maintain the level of support that the city has done in the past for the economic development activities of the Chamber. I think Steve did a very nice job articulating what it is that the Chamber does. So I would ask you tonight, I know there are a lot of difficult decisions that all of you have to make, but I would ask that you consider maintaining our budget at the level that it has been in previous years so that we can maintain our current funding level in 2020 at the same level that we did last year. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Hi there. My name is Kyle Johnson. I'm a local technology entrepreneur. I live at 705 Main Street. I'm here to speak against any potential cuts to the Chamber's budget. Job creation is extremely important to any community. Jobs fund the tax base, this meeting, and just about everything we do together as a community. According to the Kauffman Foundation, startups that develop organically are almost solely the drivers of job growth. Also, a study recently reported by the LJ World showed that Lawrence ranks dead last in having enough jobs for its college graduates. This study examined hundreds of communities across the U.S. Bottom line, we aren't creating enough startups, and we need more focus on economic development, not less. As I mentioned, I'm the founder of a local tech startup, and you may be aware that I and others have formed a nonprofit called Launch Lawrence to fundamentally change our economic development model by focusing more on homegrown startups. These are potential primary employers that create goods and services for export around the country and beyond. These are the missing pieces to our economic engine. We are woefully behind not just major tech centers, but other regional college towns like Ames, Columbia, and Lincoln. If we don't start to fix this problem immediately, we will be part of an emerging technology rust belt that develops over the next 20 years. This is unacceptable. I've been working with the Chamber, BTBC, and other entrepreneurs to begin to solve this problem. I'm very concerned that the Chamber's budget might be cut at a time when we should be figuring out how to overhaul and improve our economic development model. To be blunt, I don't want Chamber employees spending their time trying to defend their budgets. I want them spending their time helping me and many others implement programs that create new primary employers. I understand that you have very difficult budget decisions to make. However, I would strongly urge you to reconsider any cuts to the Chamber's budget. These are not the budget cuts to make. I'd be happy to speak with you outside this meeting about our plans to create homegrown primary employers, why this is essential to our economic development model, and why we need the Chamber's help to get it done. So please feel free to contact me. I'm at kyle@bixy.com, BIXY. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Other public comment on this item?
Good evening. I'm Kirsten Flory. I operate a business at 805 New Hampshire. I'm a commercial real estate agent with Colliers International, and I'm treasurer of the board of the Lawrence Chamber. So that's specifically what I want to talk about. I want to kind of echo my previous speaker's comments and make the request of the current budget proposal for the Chamber funding. And first and foremost, thank you for your previous support of a financial commitment to the Chamber. I think partnerships like this work very well when we have city participation in what the Chamber does, meaning the Chamber supports the business community, but they support far and above outweigh that initial support of just what the business community means, meaning they don't just support their members, they support the community as a whole. I know my job in commercial real estate is to grow the pie. And I know as we embrace our community and figure out ways to fund all the great things that we have, you have a hard decision. How do you fund it all? How do you take the pie we currently have and make sure the dollars work? So I'm asking you, with an economic development support, what I do, my work with the Chamber, when I do with my work as a commercial real estate agent, is we need those dollars to infuse to continue to grow the pie. A success I want to share with you that some of you might not be aware of yet is we are getting ready to sign our very first lease at the Venture Park building for Van Trust, which is a huge success. That project came to be partly because of this commission, because you were willing to take a risk, you were willing to create the Catalyst program. So things like that come with collaboration, and with collaboration comes a financial need. I kind of want to also go on record, and hopefully people that are watching today or in the room, kind of identify what is economic development and what does the Chamber do specifically to encourage that. So economic development may look like a small business entrepreneur that's, has an idea that needs some capital to get started. It might mean a small company scaling up from 3 to 5 employees that might need space needs, it might need training needs, it might need recruitment help. It might mean a larger company that's existing in our community that needs to expand, or they're gonna leave. Or it might mean a company that we want to recruit to come here because they would be a great fit, increase our tax base, increase our workforce, increase our opportunities from our students coming out of KU or our training centers, and kind of creates that wheel. It's economic development, and what the Chamber does creates training opportunities to create a viable workforce. So we have a recruitment tool.
And most importantly, we're here to grow the pie. I think that's kind of what my focus is every day. That's what I'm asking your focus to be, because I would love more than anything to create a larger pie for us to pull from that kind of hits all those things and creates all the extra opportunities that make people want to live here and stay here and grow their families and have jobs and go off into the community and survive. But most importantly, I just want to call out the elephant in the room. Economic development's risk. It is. I think you have to spend money to make money. I think a lot of times we would love to land the elephant, but sometimes you have to bite it off one piece at a time. So thank you for your support, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thanks for that information, by the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirsten. I certainly think pie sounds more appetizing than the elephant. Hi, my name is Adam Hanchy. I am also here with the Lawrence Chamber, but as Mr. Renfro and Mr. Orozco did, I think I'll serve a dual purpose as well, since everyone's already stolen my best points. I might need some help with the teleprompter. I did bring some visual aids. Not sure how this thing works. Like this? Great, thank you. Which way does this go? Turn it that way? Then I can read it. Fantastic. A dual role. I think I'm here both as a Lawrence citizen and, as I said, a representative of the Lawrence Chamber and the Economic Development Corporation of Lawrence and Douglas County. As a citizen, I'm a lifelong resident. Grew up here, proud townie. Over the years here, I've certainly been a beneficiary of some of Lawrence's support programs. I grew up playing ball at the East Lawrence Rec Center, working out at the community building, biking the trails at the river, obviously hanging out, probably doing things I shouldn't downtown. As an adult and a parent, my child has been every summer at the Arts Center, Theater Lawrence, College and Career Center. He's been very involved in the community. We have a home here, my parents here, my wife's parents are here. As an economic developer, I understand that all those things that make Lawrence so great and contribute to the quality of life we all enjoy, and myself enjoy personally, have a price tag. And that there's, as to Kirsten's point, economic development, it can be expensive. But those are the things that make Lawrence a unique place to live. That's why people move here. That's why we've grown every year by 1,000 residents since the 50s. Also, as an economic developer, I understand that there's a price tag. It's been a particularly difficult budgetary session, but I also understand that now is not the time to disinvest in economic development. I think it's counter to our shared goals. I think it exacerbates the funding challenges that we're facing. And through those shared goals, I think that's what these visual aids are meant to do. These are slides taken directly from our PERC presentation. Again, as Steve said, that was supported for full funding. I'm going to go through these fast. I don't expect everyone to read them, but what you're looking for, I think, is the collaboration, is the word of the day, but also vitality and job growth, as you'll see. This is the Chamber's mission and the EDC's mission, and you can see promote growth, wages, leadership, advocacy, economic prosperity. This is the city's Horizon 2020, the comprehensive plan that is coming to an end. But you can see those, again, growth, employment, tax base, income. This is the city's economic development policy from 2017 that explicitly states partnership between the city, the county, and the chamber. ED policy, again, growth, partnership. City of Lawrence strategic plan, collaborative solutions, economic growth, security. Here are some fruits of those collaborations.
Thank you, Adam.
BTBC. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Other public comment on this, on the budget, 2020 budget?
Good evening, Melinda Henderson. I live in Brook Creek neighborhood. So I'm not gonna reiterate my comments about the salary issue, except to say, maybe you guys could find $20,000 more
and pull it out of thin air. So the chamber will be sufficiently funded. I do agree with Kyle on that article that he mentioned. And I do hope you all had a chance to read Will Katz's email that was in your packet material last week. He's been doing a great job. But tonight, I want to take you all back to the June 4th City Commission meeting. And the second agenda item was when we had SSJ do the presentation from the study that you all requested to be done before you committed any more money to the shelter. And the action, as you can see up there, was to receive the presentation, and you did, and Erica and Thea both spoke about it. And I think they made it pretty clear that they were going to need some additional funding for this year and probably additional funding for 2020. And the minutes reflect that. So, what we had was, let's bring this over here. The action was to direct staff to facilitate a meeting with the county to discuss cost allocation related to the shelter funding and place on a future agenda item for discussion. And that motion carried 5-0. Where's the transparency? I don't think we ever saw that on another agenda item. All I know, I don't even know who the staff was that met. And all I know is that before the last city commission meeting, I believe it was the mayor and Stewart who told the shelter, we're going to give you what the county gave you. Did the rest of the commission have an opportunity to discuss that? I don't think so, because that never happened. There was no transparency. So that is extremely upsetting to me. And I can't believe that you all cannot find $104,000 in the general fund for the rest of 2019 to help them implement their plan.
Thank you, Melinda. Appreciate it.
And $208,000 for
Thank you,
next
Melinda.
year.
Other public comment on this?
I have a question for Melinda.
Well, I'll take questions.
Okay, so you stated that we told the shelter that we would give the shelter what the county was going to give them.
That's my understanding.
And I'd like to correct you because that's not what we said.
Isn't that what you decided to allot to them?
That's not what we said. You said what we said, Melinda. What we said was, we are two commissioners. We will be making a report to the whole commission, and our recommendation will be that we will fund what the shelter asked the county for. We did not know what the shelter, we did not know at that time what the county would be funding them at.
Okay.
What we said was, this is what you've asked the county for, and that's what we will recommend to our fellow commissioners that we allocate for the community shelter.
And was that recommendation supposed to be part of this action that never happened?
This is not part of this action. What I'm saying is I'm correcting the record
Okay.
because what you were told is incorrect.
Well, it wasn't necessarily that I was told that. That was when I was reading the correspondence, it indicated that
Well, I'd just like to
you
say
all agreed
that
to fund the same amount that the county did.
I'd just like to
which I
correct the
assume you
record
told the
because I was
shelter.
there, Melinda, and you weren't.
No,
Okay, so thank you very much.
certainly, happy.
And we did bring it before the commission, and this was the
When
discussion
did
last
you do
week. It was
that?
the discussion last week that we had on the budget as to what was going to be acceptable.
That was it?
Yeah. So, thank
Okay.
you.
But what about the report back from when the staff met? Is there any kind of a report?
We brought
Because
the-
that was
we
part
brought-
of the
Excuse me, Melinda. Let me-
direction.
We brought our information that we decided from the work group to the commission last
Uh-huh.
week. and the discussion was here at the commission with all 5 of us as to what the funding cuts and
Uh-huh.
or the changes in the way any funding was done. And the commission at that time discussed it, and there was a consensus to move forward with what the recommendation was at that time.
Okay,
Okay?
so we shouldn't expect any more.
Well, there's still a discussion going on tonight, so,
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean,
so,
a
at this time.
report back.
Yeah, just a discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on the 2020 budget? Any other comment? Public comment? All right, thank you. Bring it back up here.
Does staff have an update on the conversation with the county on that particular issue after that meeting?
I can report that former city manager Tom Marcus and myself met with interim county administrator Sarah Plinsky right after this meeting and had conversations about what the city or what the county was likely to fund for 19 and 20 and what the city was likely to fund for 19 and 20. Around that, I think the mayor was originally going to attend that meeting, but it was when you were in Germany.
Yeah, I was in Germany at the time.
And so we went ahead and met without you because we were on a relatively short time frame to get back for tonight. Somewhere along the line, then you all decided to go down the road of this work group. And so I think those conversations were happening simultaneously, but is that an adequate update or?
If that's the update,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I guess I don't necessarily know that we were planning on a report back, other than I think the discussion on a future agenda item was what our understanding of that direction from you all was, and that this is sort of that
This is-
discussion as you have described.
That's what I understood, was that it would come back during the budget time and with whatever results were, and then we would discuss it here, and then,
But
recommend-
certainly, if the majority of you had a different understanding of what you were expecting, let us know and we can follow up on that.
Thanks.
any other questions for staff? Okay. So what are our thoughts on the budget? We've got we need to,
Coming out of that work session, one of the things we did that gives us a lot of flexibility was to publish the budget with that $500,000 increase. The work that you and Stuart did was to go out and identify, kind of line by line within the budget, ways in which we could make necessary cuts to make it a flat mill. But by publishing at a $500,000 increase, it gives us that flexibility to have conversations with community partners and you know, essentially anybody we need to have conversations with. And it gives us a little bit of wiggle room there in the budget. And I think that that's a smart move. You know, Jeremy is very professional in the way he does his presentations, but reading between the lines, it's effectively a nightmare to publish low and then reopen the process to increase from that. It makes a whole lot more sense to publish high and then move down. And so, you know, I personally think by publishing at a $500,000 increase, we are not in any way, shape, or form disregarding the work that you did. Frankly, based upon the conversations that were had last week, I think there's a pretty fair chance we ultimately end up reflecting on the work you did in the budget. But to publish at a $500,000 increase gives us that flexibility to avoid the nightmarish scenario that Jeremy's too professional to lay out as being a nightmarish scenario.
yeah. I think that's why we did that last week that way.
And, you know, the structural imbalance is a significant issue,
Yes.
and I appreciate Jeremy pointing that out. I think we were clear when we presented our work group that, especially with regard to recreation funding, this is frankly an unsustainable budget, and will take us way down in the fund balance. So there's going to be a lot of pressure in the next year to, you know, really work on the issues of recreation centers, fees. All these things are going to have to be talked about in a very serious way. Unfortunately, what we didn't have this year was the process around that that will enable the community to really be engaged in that, because we frankly didn't roll it out until we were significantly far along in the budget process.
Right.
So it's difficult for me to say this is a good plan. It's probably maybe the best bad plan. I'm not sure how to characterize it other than that, but it's great concern, and it's untenable long term.
No, I agree that working with that, leaving in the half mil as we publish, but also taking in our intent there to leave that flat. We're being responsible, I think, as we move forward.
I think so. Yep. The idea that we still had to do some cuts. I mean, it was a very painful process, and some of the organizations that were cut are some that are dear to my heart for sure. But we've got to do something, and this is what we've come up with, and we've got a consensus from our commission, or we did last week, I should say. Again, I support what we're doing here tonight. So.
I would make a motion to authorize publication of the 2020 budget summary and establish August 6, 2019 as the public hearing date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Nanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, we're on to item number 4, which is consider approving the Lawrence Loop Trail Downtown Section Project Budget Amendment in the amount of $75,000 from the 2019 Sidewalk Back Ped Improvements ADA Ramp Funds.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. See, Jake Baldwin, Senior Project Engineer with Municipal Services and Operations. And before I get into the project background, I wanted to quickly address two brief points of confusion that were published in the Journal World yesterday in their article regarding to this item. I just wanted to clear up any uncertainty before the commission considers the item. So I just highlighted these for clarity. The first one states the city previously allocated about $105,000 for conceptual design fees for the project, which covered the 29th Street portion of the project. The city has budgeted $100,000 for the design of both the 29th Street segments and the 11th to 8th Street segments as part of this project. The second one highlighted here states the city separated spending for the two design projects to ensure the 29th Street portion could be completed if BNSF does not allow the 8th Street to 11th Street portion. The city is separating the engineering services agreement into two parts so that if the BNSF provides feedback during part 1 of our design, our engineering design, then that our part 2 concept is not feasible, the city will not have to pay part 2 of the engineering design. And I'll reiterate this again in my presentation. So in 2017, the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization completed the Lawrence Loop Alignment Study. This study was accepted by the City Commission in February of 2018. The study focused on identifying the preferred routes for two incomplete sections of the loop, one of which was the downtown section. Staff then used this study to apply to KDOT for a grant, and in January of this year, KDOT awarded the Transportation Alternatives Program grant for construction of two trail segments. Those trail segments being 29th Street from Burroughs Creek Trail to Haskell Avenue and 11th Street to 8th Street along the abandoned railway corridor. And then in May of this year, Bartlett and West was selected for design of the project. The KDOT TA grant is in the amount of $480,000 and is for construction and inspection. The city is going to be responsible for a 20% match of that grant, as well as 100% of the design, utilities, and right-of-way costs. Our 2019 CIP identifies $100,000 for design And our 2020 recommended budget also has $350,000 of additional funds. So combine that with our KDOT grant, and we have a total available funding for the project of $930,000. Our total project estimate is $917,500, showing that the project is within budget. As for the engineering services agreement, this will be with Bartlett & West in the amount of $179,808. This engineering service agreement was broken into two parts. The first part you see there is for $104,452. This will be for the full design of the 29th Street segment and the 11th to 8th Street segments. Part two, pardon me, and in that part one, these are the segments that have funding budgeted for construction. Part two is going to be for $75,356 and is the conceptual design of 8th Street to Constant Park. This is not included in the original project budget and is in addition which requires the requested project budget amendment. Again, part two is our conceptual design between 8th Street to Constant Park. This is in response to the 2017 alignment study. BNSF did not recommend the project as proposed. They indicated additional information was needed. So this conceptual design is going to provide us with the design detail needed for the BNSF railway to reevaluate the project. Now, however, if discussion with BNSF railway during the part one design provides feedback that the part two concept design is a non-starter, as is likely, part two of the agreement will not be spent. And in summary, again, our engineering service agreement is broken into two parts. The first part being the full design of our 29th Street segment and our 8th Street to 11th Street segment. And part two is going to be the concept design of 11th Street to Constant Park, which requires the budget amendment of $75,000 from the 2019 sidewalk, bike, ped, and ADA ramp funds. This engineering services agreement is going to give the city flexibility to react to what the BNSF decides, and staff recommends approval of the project budget amendment and engineering services agreement.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we will open this up to public comment. Any public comments on this item? Okay, bring it back up here.
I always look to you on engineering services, you know that, right?
Well, this is just another piece of the puzzle we've been working on for a while, and it's great to have those grant funding to support this as well as the other projects. So I'm in favor of moving forward with it.
I would move to approve the Lawrence Loop Trail Downtown Section Project Budget Amendment in the amount of $75,000 from the 2019 Sidewalk Bike Ped Improvements ADA Ramp Fund CIP CI09 for design and conceptual design of improvements, and authorizing the city manager to execute an engineering services agreement for the design and conceptual design of the Lawrence Loop Trail Downtown Section Project CIP PR 2121 with Bartlett & West in the amount of $179,808.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Nanda, second by Commissioner Boley. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you, everybody. All right, item number 5, we're going to receive an update on the City of Lawrence strategic plan.
Mayor, before we begin that, for anybody who might be listening and planning to attend or build their schedule around the order we're going, you and I had talked about actually reordering the agenda to move item 6, where we're motioning to recess into executive session, to actually reorder that to place the commission items and city manager's report in front of that, so that anybody who's sticking around for the city manager's report doesn't have to sit through
30 minutes.
The 30-minute executive session.
Yep.
Sherry, would that be something we could do at this point with a motion?
I mean, you can, but you did approve the agenda already, which would have been the time to do
I
that.
know, we forgot. Can we
If
do
I ask
anything?
nicely.
Are we still in control of the agenda, though? I mean, technically,
Okay.
we can still change it? Okay.
Okay, yeah, we screwed up.
So I would make a motion that we reorder the agenda to place items H and I and J above item G6.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Boley. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Sherry.
All right, good
Hi,
evening.
Danielle.
Danielle Bushcutter in the Finance Department, the Budget and Strategic Initiatives Administrator. Tonight, I'm taking off my budget hat a little bit and giving you an update on the strategic plan. So before I jump into kind of an update on each of the items that we have before you, I wanted to let you know, and we talked about this a little bit at the last update, but that there are funds in the 2019 budget to bring in a facilitator to help with the update of this plan that will likely happen at the very end of 2019 or very early in 2020. So I wanted to kind of foreshadow that and make sure that you were aware of that. So we've had some discussions about wanting to bring a facilitator in when we go through kind of the formal update of this plan. So that'll happen once the new commission is seated, but there are funds available in the budget to do that and to bring in somebody to help facilitate that. So unless there are any questions on that piece of it, I will start to go through and give an update on each of the priority initiatives. And looking at this, I think I pulled up the wrong agenda item. The screen over here is not working, so I apologize. I'm having to. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Okay, so the first, yes. How's that? All right, so the first priority initiative that we'll review is related to the advisory board. So we do have a full memo that outlines this in a little bit more detail, but I'll kind of give you the high-level overview of what's changed over the last 4 months. The first one is related to several of our code boards. When you updated a lot of that language as part of that process, we also updated that board. So several of those have been consolidated. One of the other things that we wanted to highlight was that the mayor is currently working on a letter to get out to all of the advisory boards, really encouraging them to be open and transparent and ensuring that all of their rosters and agenda and meeting minutes are posted. So that's something that is in the process of being worked on. The other item that we added a little bit later, but wanted to make sure and note, is that there's been some discussions at the last couple of these updates regarding the role of the Social Service Funding Advisory Board and what their scope should be, kind of centered around the general fund allocation that they currently make recommendations to you all in terms of funding different social service agencies. So we wanted to kind of seek your direction here tonight, if you have any, about this particular item, and if you want to proceed with changing the scope of that advisory board, or if you want to keep it under kind of the current operation. One of the things I do want to highlight is that we did bring this idea and discussion to that advisory board. They've had several conversations at multiple meetings, and ultimately have not really provided direction to you all in terms of how they would recommend that you proceed. I think based on the conversations, they kind of understand both sides of it, so they didn't really have a recommendation for you all, but they are aware of the discussion and have been talking about it themselves, and that's reflected in those meeting minutes. So I wanted to bring that item up in particular. I don't know if you want to talk about it or if you want me to keep going through and we can come back and have discussion at the end.
Do you want some more discussion on this from?
Do you want to do it now or do you want to do it later?
Yeah, we can go ahead and go through the whole thing
great.
and then ask you questions.
Great, okay. All right, so the second item is related to kind of ongoing professional development opportunities. So one of the things that we kind of highlight every time related to this item is a non-supervisory training that we have that is in its second year, so that is still occurring. The other thing related to this that we wanted to highlight that kind of relates to this ongoing professional development is some work that we've done internally on our intranet to really highlight different training programs available to staff. So we've had a lot of work to make sure that staff are aware of all the different training opportunities, and we've implemented a new software package so that everyone has access to some training opportunities if they want to be self-directed in that regard. The other thing that we wanted to highlight here is that We have updated the performance evaluation tool that is going to be used for the next round of employee performance evaluation. So that will be rolled out in the next couple months. And that will give employees a little bit of time to look at the new tool before the new evaluation process begins in October. And then the final item under this initiative is related to succession planning. And so in the next couple months, we should be working towards getting a full project plan in place regarding that element of this initiative. So hopefully there will be more on that kind of the next time that we come before you and provide an update. All right, item number 3 relates to barriers for high-speed fiber throughout the city. These first couple bullet points are kind of the boilerplate language, just giving some context and background. On July 18th, you all adopted an ordinance related to the city right-of-way. And this is really, from a staff perspective, where this initiative, where the focus was related to this initiative. But as we discussed at the last meeting, I think there's a desire to take this further. And so I think that would be a really good discussion to have when we bring in that facilitator and kind of update these initiatives, if we want to talk about things like digital inclusion and some of those concepts, because that's really, I think, one step beyond what we had at least in here initially. So I think in a lot of ways, this item is viewed as kind of completed, but I think based on the discussion that the commission has had previously, that there may be an opportunity to kind of build on this with the next iteration if that's the desire of the full commission. All right, so we have 9th Street on here. This is considered complete as it relates to the strategic plan, so I'll skip over that. Item number 5 is related to the city facility master plan. And we did, again, have kind of a supplemental memo included where we tried to highlight some of the key kind of facility updates that we're either in the process of undergoing or have undergone since we've adopted this. I think, as Commissioner Boley noted during our last meeting, we also now have a strategic or a CIP process that heavily influences this as well. But one of the things that we also wanted to include is a general facility inventory that we have put together as staff. And this isn't a full facility asset list. This is really an inventory of the facilities that staff are housed in and operate out of. So you'll notice there's a couple, like our wastewater treatment plants, for example. If you go out there, you will see a number of facilities, but as it relates to this, you'll see the kind of the primary administration building, not all of them. So we really tried to take a look at when those buildings were created, what is their current, what are they constructed of, what is the current condition that those facilities are in. And those are the types of things that we look at as we go through our budget process, as we go through prioritization of our CIP and those types of items. So we did include that, so hopefully that helps at least give you something to kind of look at and respond to as we talk about the facility master plan. Item number 6 is the development and implementation of priority-based budgeting and enhancing the communication surrounding the annual budget. So I was up here in March with kind of the first iteration of PBB and what those results looked like. So I think that will kind of be an evolving process as we move forward. But another thing that we highlight here, and I think is always good to note, is that we also have OpenGov that's available. If people really want to dig into the budget and see it at a line item level, that's available. If that's more detail than they care to see, we also have a pretty high level budget book, and I think those two things in tandem work really well together. Item number 7 is related to the communication of the long-term financial strategy. Again, this is something that we have in the budget book, our 5-year forecast with all of our major funds, and is in the 2020 budget. And I see that continuing in the years to come as well, even if it's not directly related to a strategic plan item. And then item number 8, I'm happy to go into. I know there is a city commission report item on this as well that goes into a little bit more detail, but Essentially, as we have noted in this memo, we're working with our consultants on kind of the public engagement opportunities, and they're working on collaborate or getting all of that put together and working towards the next phase of that program and that project. So happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding any of these items or what it looks like moving forward.
I have one question. On the facilities inventory, when you talk about building conditions, if there's, I think, one building that you had indicated that we actually lease the space. If it's not specifically indicated that we lease it, does that mean we own the building?
I think that would be a safe assumption, but I would want to go back and verify that. But I think by and large, yes, that would be
Okay.
a safe assumption.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That was it. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So we need to have that conversation about social studies.
Well,
So-
Yeah.
Do we
Do
need
we-
public comment?
yeah,
for
do we
Yeah,
wanna do-
public comment, that's what I was gonna do. I lost my place, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Public comment for this? Any public comment? Okay, back up here.
Let me jump in real quick. On the letter that is being planned, it's my understanding that the idea is to get the agendas and the minutes transparent for all of the groups for which we're appointing people and we participate in. I'd encourage you to also consider requesting board meeting packets, because sometimes you get the minutes and you get the agenda, but you don't have the information that the board members looked at
Yeah.
when they were in the meeting. So references contained in the minutes
It's true.
are hard to understand. So
Yeah, that's
that's
true.
one observation I'd like you to consider.
A good example of that is Explore Lawrence. They put out a whole little booklet for every of their board meetings that has got some really good information in it that we can't see.
I find that true with LMH Health as well.
There you
So-
go. So I think that's a good idea. Okay, is that, thank you. Any other,
That's all on that. for me.
that's all? Okay.
The Social Service Funding Advisory Board, I'm pretty much on record saying I think that we ought to have them essentially become the Special Alcohol Fund Advisory Board with, looking at how we do the Special Alcohol Fund, with the priority-based budgeting, trying to essentially prioritize among the various allocations of the general fund. I think we have to have a little bit different viewpoint on that.
I'm interested in that, just to, again, just start making it cleaner as to how we look at the socials, the fundings and the type of, where those monies come from, the better we can track it. And I think it's always a good move to do that in the future. Okay. Any other direction, at all that we want to give staff on this? Craig, anything? Okay, I think that's it for this item.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need a
on that,
motion
or-
on this?
Okay. I
for-
move that we direct staff to essentially put the Social Service Funding Advisory Board, redrafting it to be the Special Alcohol Fund Advisory Board, and limit its consideration to the Special Alcohol Fund monies for succeeding years.
Did you catch that, Sherry? You might need to say it
Just a
again
little
louder.
louder, I'm sorry.
Okay, that staff essentially administer a change in the Social Service Funding Advisory Board to become the Special Alcohol Fund Advisory Board, with the task of making recommendations with regard to special alcohol fund money, and that the general fund would be essentially dealt with by staff recommendations.
Got it?
I think I said that about the same way.
You got it? You okay, Sherry? Yeah, Do we have a second?
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner Boley, a second by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Can I take a second to lament that we're losing the acronym SSFAB, which is the gay bar in Lawrence that
Sounds
doesn't
like-
exist that I
sounds
really
like a
want to
ship,
visit?
doesn't it? Yeah.
Passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you for that commentary.
Sorry.
You're supposed to push this button if you want to.
I've admired that acronym from afar for quite a while, and now it's going away.
I'm so sorry for you. So we have reordered the agenda, and we're going to move on to item H, which is commission items. I've got 3 items that I would like to talk about, and I apologize, I'm not for sure. The first one is future agenda items, okay? So I'm going to talk about these, and I'm not sure if they all go under future agenda items. But the first one is we've had some discussions and as well as some encounters recently with the federal government on the ICE situation, as well as with discussions on the sanctuary cities. So I wanted to bring that about because I would like for us to consider either a future agenda item to begin that discussion as to how we, if and how we want to move forward. You know, my idea on this is that I am more interested in us having a hard written policy as to how we deal with the ICE situation when they come and interact with our police department. I know that my understanding is we have got a practice that we do based on what our chief of police has told me. I would like to see it to be more of a written form, a hard policy going forward. And so I'm just going to open it up to the commission to hear any thoughts that they have on this.
I think it's an important conversation, and if you hadn't brought it up, I would have. I think that, you know, I was on the task force, I think it was 3 years ago when this originally was brought to the commission, and we reached out to the undocumented immigrant community who really, at that time, felt like it was very well-intentioned, but also bringing attention to that community that they didn't necessarily want at that time. I think that things have changed. And so it's an important time to have that conversation because it's a dangerous time for undocumented folks. And, you know, having worked through my immigration practice with young people in our community who are undocumented, with victims of crime, with victims of intimate partner violence, which is also a crime, I know how difficult life is on a day-to-day basis anyway. There are a multitude of policies that aren't just a label as a sanctuary city that cities have been passing, and I think that it would be irresponsible of us not to at least look at what those policies are and see how we can implement them within our community. So I would love to see that as a future agenda item.
Anybody else?
I think it's vital for our community that everyone feel able to contact our emergency services provider when they need help. And I think it's important for the emergency service providers to have clear direction. So I think each one of these things, you know, speaks for this conversation.
So is that something that you want to consider for a future agenda item? Are we?
Yes, please.
Do we need a motion on that, Sherry? Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
As a future
Well,
agenda
yeah,
item, a work session?
that's what I
Do you
was-
wanna
wasn't
Let's
sure
do a
about.
work
You
session.
want to do a work session? Is that okay to do it?
I think we need a work
Yeah, I
session
think-
Yeah,
before,
let's do a
because
work
there's,
session.
otherwise it's gonna be difficult for staff to put together a recommendation.
Because I know there's a community group that's also working on some possible policies for it, so that would be an opportunity, I guess, at that point to hear what that brings forth. So is it okay to jump to that and do a future
Let's put it
work
under that
session?
item.
So,
I would move that we add the topic of sanctuary cities to a future work session, preferably a sooner work session
I
than a
guess
later
I'd
one.
like to,
wait a minute.
a friendly amendment to that would be that we talk about city policies
Versus the,
versus sanctuary cities per se.
Okay,
I mean, I think
yeah,
this
I was using that as
focusing
an
on-
umbrella term.
Focusing on city policies
Okay,
is,
in respect to,
yeah.
how can we rephrase that?
any thoughts on that?
Help me rephrase that.
Why don't we just call it, I mean, why don't we just, if you've withdrawn your motion?
So withdrawn.
Okay, let me give this a shot. I would move that we add to a future work session agenda the topic of city policy with regards to undocumented immigration. And in this respect, that gives us a wide range of topics with city policy in terms of sanctuary status, in terms of
Please.
police interaction with immigration and customs enforcement, in terms of whatever else might come out of that conversation.
I will second that motion.
Will that work, Sherry? Okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Nanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Oh,
we didn't do
yeah.
public comment.
yeah.
Do,
I apologize on that.
We don't
We
for,
don't do
we
public
don't, we
comment.
don't
We
do
don't.
public
We don't.
comment for adding a work session
Yeah.
item.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, 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 okay.
that's
All
right, we
yeah,
don't.
okay.
So that was a 4-0
Yeah,
vote,
yeah.
by the way.
That's a 4-0 vote.
Are we good?
We voted.
Sherry? 4-0. Got it. Sorry for the confusion, everybody. KT, you got me there on that one. Okay, so the second item I had was the T21, Tobacco 21. That has been settled, I believe, in the Topeka case. Is that correct, Tony?
That's correct. The city of Topeka received a favorable ruling from the Kansas Supreme Court.
So I would like to ask the commission to set that in motion to actually become, I know it's on our future agenda items. I would like to kind of get that ball rolling again if we can. Anybody interested in that?
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm also not interested in T21.
okay. There we have it. Okay. Well, thank you for your consideration. Okay, item number 3, I've had a request from community members about Horizon 2040. I know we had a work session on it recently. Do we know when that potentially might be coming back to the commission?
First meeting in August, which I understand is also the budget meeting, so we may want to take some direction on your desire to see that next. It would be we would recommend it for adoption, or at least give that opportunity to you.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have enough time to really go over it.
Yeah,
We've published a schedule. It's always subject to movement. If you have an idea of when you'd like us to put it on an agenda, we're happy to take that direction.
So that's the day of the budget hearing?
I believe it is.
Okay.
that would be
Yeah.
the last time it came forward, it was
It
like
was short.
11:35 at night when
Yeah.
we started.
I mean, we would like to
So
give you
that's
the
a
fuller
bad-
presentation, let the
That's what I would
public
like to
see
see,
that.
yeah.
So either we have 2 more opportunities in August.
So I would look towards the end of August. Okay, if that's okay with the
Please.
commission?
Yes,
that works.
We need to
absolutely.
give that some due process and due study. Okay,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you. Those were the items that I had. All right, anybody else have any future agenda items? Okay, future work session items to add. Anything else? Okay. Any other commission items, general commission items? All right, then we're going to move on to the city manager's report.
Mr. Owens had asked me to cover this here this evening, and so I will provide a brief explanation of these items. The first is an update on the downtown master plan. Specifically, I think there was a question that the commission had with regard to the map.social function, and so that's covered, as well as just a general next step discussion about where we are with the master plan. The next 2 items there, the building permit reports and the utility billing reports, are just simply our routine reports, nothing particular to highlight there for you. The 4th item is the sales tax report for June of 2019, so we continue to track just slightly under 1% in the year-to-date over 2018 in sales tax, and that information is there, provided there for you. We also wanted to provide you with an update on a planning process for opportunity zones, and this relates to our prior report to you that the state of Kansas is interested in us participating in a statewide prospectus, and this enables us to have some community engagement process. We thought it was important to put together a planning team, and the names are outlined there, the Douglas County Community Foundation, a representative of the Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods, Reggie Robinson with KU, Steve Kelly with the Chamber, and Adam with the Chamber, and Jeff Jewell, who works with us for National Development Council. Myself and Britt would be working to just plan the community outreach on that. So we'd be providing additional information to the commission as that comes forward.
And the last two items here on the report, the future agendas items, wanted to mention again at your next meeting coming up August the 6th, you have the public hearing for the 2020 budget and the first reading of the 2020 budget ordinance. The future item list there the Transportation Commission composition, and we'll remove that tobacco 21 based on your discussion earlier here this evening. On the future work session items, we have, in addition to the items that you had noted this evening, one of the things we did want to kind of get your feedback on is the Sustainability Advisory Board has made some recommendations to you with regard to plastic bag ordinance. And so if you would like to have that on the work session in August, we had that available. But I certainly wanted to ask the commission if that's how you wish to handle that. Additionally, we had some items that we haven't yet scheduled, some of the additional master plan reviews, the transient guest tax discussion that you indicated last week that you would like to have, and then also a discussion on the sidewalk program, not only the next phase, but also you indicated a discussion on a possible incremental approach, and so having a discussion on that.
So
And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
do we know if that update on the sidewalk program, is that ready to go, or is that still developing? Because I know they were making changes.
If Brandon or Dave have any comments on that, about timing?
I would say it's not ready to go.
Okay.
And so if you can give us a little bit of time, maybe I can go back and then come back next week and say, hey, let's get a little bit of a schedule together on what we're trying to do and see how long it's going to take. But we're really in the early stages of just accumulating and forming a new team to kind of take a look at that and look at new techniques to make an improvement.
Okay, all right, thank
If
you.
that's okay.
So for August, the choices, is that,
So there is that recommendation from the Sustainability Advisory
I'm
Board.
interested in hearing about that.
So I know that was something that you had referred to them, so I think that's ready to come back if you wanted to entertain it. We just wanted to,
Yeah,
check with you.
I'm open to that. Anybody else? So let's go ahead and start with that.
and certainly put that on.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Public comment.
Any public comment on this?
Thank you. Katie Welsh, speaking only for myself. Just a suggestion on the team that's being put together for the opportunity zones. I think it'd be great to have a representative from Haskell because they are in the zone and everything adjoining them is in the zone. And we always forget we have 3 universities. And then on the misstep around the map and the downtown master plan, and I appreciate your concern, Mayor. I apologize I didn't get to read the city manager's report to hear what he had to say about that. But it's been a discussion every day in East Lawrence because people are being allowed to go on the interactive map on the downtown master plan, make plans about development in our neighborhood. So could somebody explain what has happened? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else on that, Diane?
So we in the report, there's a couple of screenshots. I think there was a couple concerns that were allayed. One was with regard to when you opened it up, there was a concern that people had expressed that it opened up on East Lawrence. We provided some screenshots and talked with the, Scott's gonna pull that up here. We talked with the consulting firm about that. I think the issue may be how it appears when it opens up on a couple browsers, but in the report, we have a couple of examples of opening up in Chrome and then opening up on Edge, and it does really kind of by design show that general area of downtown Lawrence, again with the study area that is highlighted. It does allow for comments on the area, on the fringes, just because it, that transition to the neighborhood zones, I think the consultants thought would be appropriate, and we have not done anything with regard to comments allowing anyone to put a dot where they would like to on these maps, and you can see kind of some areas, either the program allows you to highlight an area or make a dot or a star. And I think the thing that we want to emphasize that's relayed in the report is that how this information is used is completely to the prerogative of the commission. This is just meant to be a public input tool that can be considered by you all as you look at the report. And that's the only purpose of it. But we have not intentionally not done anything to change anyone's comments, to censor anyone's comments. It's open to whatever people would like to say about downtown as part of the process.
So can they make comments anywhere on the map or just in certain areas?
Anywhere that this shows up, and as you can see, there hasn't been anything that's been completely far-flung from the general study area, but people have made comments that are around the downtown area.
So again, so they could, just looking at that map there, they could click way out west and make a comment?
Well, they could if it, again, it needs to be within the view of the map viewer when you first open it up. I haven't seen anybody do anything that's completely far from the study area.
Okay.
And again, if somebody were to, that would be something that that the governing body you can decide if that's not relevant to the discussion of the plan.
This is a composite of several maps. So how this works is anyone can go online, open up the map, start adding any one of these symbols you see mean different things when you look at the key, and can create a map. So we do have, it doesn't quite show, maybe a little bit better up here. We've got items all the way up the river from different stakeholder groups proposing, commenting different things, proposing different things, because they see from their perspective a connection to downtown on that item. And so it's completely unlimited because it was an open invitation to any and all to define downtown for yourself. That was an important component of how we approached the scope of it. Even though we're eventually going to land, you're going to land in your review of the plan on the downtown area and all the policies that go with it. So this is simply a tool that gives more input. It'll be synthesized and analyzed and a report formed by the consultant at the end of the day. But this really is a compilation of everybody's individual maps, and on those individual maps, when you get into them, that's where you can go in, give a thumbs up, a thumbs down, provide other comment. So it's really, that's the tool. It's, technology has given us new tools to do planning work with, and this is one of these social social component tools that helps with that.
So in our contract with the consultant, did we have a specific outline of the area that they're supposed to be focusing on?
We did, and this is that map that comes from that scope of work. It intentionally moves into a couple of blocks away from what is considered the business district part of downtown, because it is vitally important to have discussions and outcomes related to how the adjacent neighborhoods work with downtown and vice versa. So any number of things with parking and transportation and policing and all kinds of issues are interrelated and interconnected, and that's what we're striving for. So I know it's not, maybe some of the comments aren't popular, but they're not the consultants, they're not staffs, they're individuals going on building their own maps.
And Mayor, I think if I can kind of interject here, I think it is important that when we look at a downtown master plan that we do extend the boundaries of what we're talking about beyond what we normally consider downtown, because those people are impacted. And a downtown master plan is going to have to consider things like neighborhood parking. The topic came up when we had our parking consultant about whether or not we wanted to do residential parking permits on some of those, the state streets, that abut New Hampshire and Massachusetts, Vermont, and all that. And so if we're going to have those conversations as part of the downtown master plan, it seems counterintuitive to say, okay, let's only allow public feedback for the literal business district of downtown, even though in making our decisions and in crafting a master plan, we're going to talk about things beyond that business district. So mean, I understand the concern about, you know, are we trying to grow downtown? But if we're going to talk about areas that are more than just the current downtown as part of that master plan, we ought to allow the public process to talk about it as well.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one thing, KT. I'm sorry.
And I totally understand what you're saying, and yes, of course, we have to consider what's outside downtown, but draw the line around downtown. Look at the East Lawrence plan. We sent the consultants the neighborhood boundaries maps that are on the city website. The area of transition on the east side is from New Hampshire to the alley. That is listed as the area of shared concern. I love that. So that's the transition, the half block that goes into the neighborhood, and we would just ask that you respect it. And the fact that it doesn't come up on certain servers, our president was an IT supervisor at the state of Kansas, and it comes up on his server, so thank you.
Thank you, KT. Okay, well, thank you for that update. Appreciate it. Okay, we're up to reviewing calendar items. Anything we need to add to the calendar?
No.
Nope. Okay,
I would move that we recess into executive session for approximately 30 minutes to discuss the current employer-employee negotiations between the city's administrative staff and representatives of Local 1596 IAFF pursuant to the employer-employee negotiations exception set forth in KSA 75-4319B3. The justification for the executive session is to keep employer-employee negotiations matters confidential at this time. At the end of the executive session, the City Commission will resume its regular meeting in the City Commission room.
Second.
got a motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Nanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. We're in executive session for about 30 minutes.
And I move to extend this session by 10 minutes.
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner Bolick, a second by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have nothing to report.
I would move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Herbert, a second by Commissioner Nanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We are done. 8:45. There you go. Bringing it down.